Welcome to the Edinburgh Fringe. Sometimes a pink cushion is just a pink cushion. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, Edinburgh calling. Ewan Spence here once more, and all of the arts festival which is inhabiting our capital city for August. Trying to get all of that into your ears, one show at a time. I mean, there's close to 4,000 shows now with extra editions. I'm not going to manage all of them. You know that, you've known that for 20 years, and what we have is just a flavour of the Fringe here, backed off by some Texan bagpipe rock and rollers. Need fire. Thanks, guys. Things that were chosen correctly back in 2005, that's one of them. The other one was the Edinburgh Fringe show as the perfectly easy to find branding on the podcast. So if you want to help other people find the increasingly difficult and swamped out in just even in search term phrases, link, like, love, share and subscribe. Today we're going to speak to Eve Miller, the writer and director of Cutty Sark Theatre's Turn the Cloth, a queer Scottish folk horror about tradition, superstition and Elvira. As the first storm of winter arrives, tradition dictates that the women gather in the village hall to ward off the Kelpie, lest it steal away a bride for the year. Eve and I talk about being both a writer and a director on a project, and if the roles can be creatively separated. The sound design of the show that actually uses stereo separation in the theatre, and leaving a little bit of mystery just as the curtain falls. Joining me now in the studio from Turn the Cloth, it's writer and director Eve Miller. Eve, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. Nice to be here.
We're getting close to the end of the Fringe. How are you feeling?
Feeling good, yeah. Bit tired,
You're lying.
but
You're
ready.
lying.
No, I'm ready for the final push. Ready to give some of our best shows yet.
Tell us about the show, Turn the Cloth.
So it is based in Scottish folklore. It's a folk horror, and it's set in the 1980s. It is a horror, but it's not too scary. So if you're a bit of a scaredy cat, it's still all right. And there are some nice funny bits as well. So it's not all just doom and gloom. We follow four teenage girls in a small Scottish village as they take part in a tradition that their village has been keeping going for centuries to ward off the mythical Kelpie of Scottish folklore, which is a water horse monster that can shapeshift into an attractive man, and he likes to stalk the young girls in the village and steal away a bride every year. So all of the unmarried girls go and sit in the village hall and turn the cloth, which is a traditional way of waterproofing material, to keep him at bay for the next year. But this night, one of the girls doesn't turn up.
There's a lot of angles in there, and I'm wondering if the straightforward option of what is being discussed is there, and the horror is just a sort of presentational layer over the top.
I would say it's more than just a presentational layer. I think there's actually a good bit of discussion in the play about why horror as a genre is particularly powerful. And it's a line that I've seen people afterwards sort of have a bit of discussion about. One of the characters is like a big horror movie buff, and she talks about how horror and feeling that fear, horror kind of opens you up to experiencing a story at a deeper level than sort of anything else. And I think that that is one of the ways that horror is used in the play. It's also, I think, really interesting to look at what scares us and why it scares us. And in this play, we're looking a lot at prejudices and like cultural storytelling, and how in some cases fears are rooted in biases, and in some case fears are rooted in warnings, and how those two things can be interplaying and also um, really impact people's day-to-day lives.
What was the first spark to start you writing this?
I really wanted to, so I was a director first before I was a writer. I really wanted to direct a spooky Scottish play that was a sort of mainly female cast. And I couldn't find one that had cheap rights. And so I started writing one for myself. And then the very first draft was born, which was in like 2024, and it was a bit rubbish. And it was set in the medieval times. Um, and then I retooled it after having come out as queer, after having done a gender history degree focusing on the 1980s. And the play just kept kind of popping into my head. And I just started my theatre company, and I was like, do you know what? This story is really good. It deserves a better framing and a more intentional framing. And that's what this version is. So now it's in the 80s. It's a lot more fun. It's a lot more subversive, and it's a lot more queer.
In terms of horror at the Fringe, the theatres can be very, very dark, but they're essentially black box theatres. You can't bring much out on stage, and what you can is limited, being Fringe
Mm.
theatre. So how do you, as a writer, approach writing, knowing that it's going to be in a black box?
As a fringe theatre maker, you do have to consider the limitations of the form that you're working in, but those don't they don't always have to act as limitations. And I do think that the best fringe theatre is work that is made um sort of in tandem with the form rather than against it. One of my favorite things about horror is how scary the unseen is, and I think that sometimes things almost lose their power when they are seen. Like think about when you're a kid and you're scared of the dark. Um, you wouldn't be so scared if if the light was on. You can see what there is, and even if there was a spider or a scary monster, at least you can see it and you know what your next move is. When you can't see it, it has a power that knowledge really sort of undercuts. So first of all, I think there is real power. I mean, spoiler alert, there's not a massive horse that comes out onto the stage. Um, I know. So that doesn't happen, but there's a lot that we can do with the power of suggestion, and a lot that you can do with tech that really sort of ramps up the atmosphere, and makes you scared. The biggest thing that we've done is our sound design. We've got a really wonderful sound designer. Her name's Molly Kavanagh, and she has composed the full score, and she's done some really cool work using sounds that she's recorded from like real storms and from a creaking window in her flat that's really spooky sounding. And she's just composed like such an innovative design for us. The whole thing all the way through is a soundscape, and she does some really cool stuff that I get a bit nerdy about, where she like pans the sound between the different speakers, and it really like biologically makes your ears kind of prick up, which I think is so cool.
Not a lot of Fringe performances rely on stereo, so they're just mark that off the bingo cards. Uses stereo. So you're the writer,
Yeah,
but you're also the director. So do they ever compete with each other? Because if there was
for
a
sure.
writer and a director, they could come to an argy bargy and work out an arrangement. You can't do that with yourself, can you?
No, and it definitely is a process. So this isn't the first one of my own plays that I've directed. And it was definitely a much bigger obstacle the first time that I worked on my own writing, because you're right, as a writer, you're almost fun to think about challenging the director and writing stuff that's kind of impossible to do on stage. And then as the director, certainly me as a director, I do love to just go, okay, well, I hate that line, so we're changing that, and I'm doing this instead. I'm not listening to that stage direction. But when you're both, it's there's a bit of coming up against a brick wall. So I have tried to be quite brutal with myself, and if I'm in the rehearsal room and there's stuff that isn't working, I change it. And I'm lucky to have had a really great associate director. Her name's Eve Dixon Batchelor. She's great, and she has been so invaluable in being like an outside eye and showing me what's worked and what hasn't. And also my cast, lovely, wonderful cast, are very, very vocal. And if they think that I've written something stupid, they will tell me. And then they will let me know how they would prefer to say it, and then we can kind of have that process in the room. But yeah, it's been a very collaborative process.
When do you start directing? As in, is it like the first line if the second you're writing, or is it at the end of the draft or the process? Is there a switchover point in your head?
Not really, not with this play. I think it's felt very, yeah, it's a good question. I think it's felt quite like a continuous loop, bit of yeah, a bit of an endless feedback loop of like when I'm writing, I've been thinking about how to direct it, when, especially in the early stages of rehearsing, in the rehearsal room, thinking about how to rewrite it and how to edit it and bring it to that final point. Um, yeah, I think both processes happen at once. But I guess when I'm reading a play, for the first time as a director, I'm thinking about the same things that I would think about as I'm writing something. The two processes are very linked in my head.
Did you ever write yourself into a corner or direct yourself into a corner?
I I mean, I wrote in that a sort of key point of the play is people entering and exiting from a door. And no fringe theatre I know has a door that is like usable on stage. And also our stage is only 2 meters deep. So even a prop door that we could rent or buy or whatever wouldn't fit in it. So that was a bit of a kicking myself moment because I had to come up with some quite innovative solutions. Um, but yeah, it's mainly logistical stuff like that where I'm like, why did I do that to myself? I could have just written this differently, but I'm attached now. So yeah.
Does that mean that you have to rely on Eve a little bit more because it's harder to kill your darlings?
I don't know. I think yes and no. I think it's a funny thing in that a lot of the time the things that I am attached to are not the what an outside person would think of as the most important or the most um yeah, I don't like sometimes Eve will come to me and she'll be like, I don't think this is working. Do you think we can reblock it or reword this line or whatever? And I'll be like, yeah, I don't care. And then it'll be something really small, like um like the color of a cushion in someone's bedroom, and it's like I can't find a pink cushion. I'll be like, well, we let's cancel the play then because it needs to be pink. So yeah, it's yeah, it's funny the things that your brain as a writer clings on to as the most important.
My brain just went, oh, so there's color theory involved in the play. Oh, look, oh no, that was irony, wasn't it? There's cloth, there's pink. It's the color of femininity. Maybe it threads through. And no,
Well,
no. It's
yeah.
sometimes a cushion is just a cushion, and I read far too much into things.
But also sometimes it is important. And that being said, the actual cloth it is like a bit of tartan, but it's kind of pinky purple. And it's that is very much on I almost said on purple. That is very much on purpose for the reasons that you're outlining there.
In terms of relevancy, though, this is a play that, although it's set in the 80s, is very much of its time and is very much one of the horrors of our time. Did you feel? Do you feel a lot of responsibility bringing this to the public and being at the forefront of the messaging?
For sure. I think it's definitely something that I really is a message about safety and how sort of people of marginalized genders are are put in a more vulnerable position in society that I felt really strongly about communicating with care. And I think that there's very few women who have not experienced being scared walking home or anything like that. And so part of it is in the way that we tell the story, which I think and I hope we have done very sensitively, but also we it really felt important to partner with a charity um, that is really near and dear to my heart. It's a charity called Strut Safe. They were actually started by former Edinburgh Uni students, and they're a UK-wide volunteer run phone line that keeps people company when they're walking home at night. So if you're walking by yourself and you feel unsafe or you just want a bit of a chat until you get yourself in the door, but you're not at the point of needing to like call the emergency services or whatever, then you can call Strut Safe and they will make sure that you're all right on your way home. So we've been raising money for them through this production. We do a little collection at the end, and we've got a little speech letting people know that they exist. And that they're a resource that's out there and that cares about this issue. So yeah, it's a really important issue and it's at the heart of the play's story and messaging.
In terms of research, is this a play that you needed to heavily research?
I did a bit of research, not so much about the sort of issue of safety walking home or anything like that, but I've got a background in history and in English literature and Scottish literature. So I have a lot of knowledge about the folklore elements and about the historical events that I'm sort of drawing on and referencing and allegorizing, but less so the sort of more anecdotal stuff about the feeling of being unsafe as a young woman, which is much more informed from like my personal experiences and also the experiences of my loved ones.
What about during the read through when you get the four strong cast coming in? Presumably, they will have their own personal experiences that they can feed in. How much of that do you take on board as a writer director?
Definitely in terms of shaping the characters, less so the characters' experiences, because they're all sort of what the audience finds out about each of the characters on the stage, is all very carefully selected to kind of drop hints as to whether this folklore is true or not, whether it's a real danger of a supernatural force or whether something else may be what the real danger is. And so there was no sort of like people's personal experiences informing what happens to their characters, but certainly in terms of what people brought to their own characterization, um, it was really interesting following the first read through, because we had our read through really early just due to scheduling. So there was quite a long rewriting time for me that I was able to retool some stuff. And so there's one of the characters, her name's Ailey, and she's very traditional. She likes living where she lives. She likes the tradition, she likes the village, and she can be quite harsh and stern. And then the actor who plays her, wonderful Neve, she brought a real vulnerability and softness to the role, that I totally have springboarded off of, and really added those sort of a bit more light and shade to the character.
And in terms of sitting down at that read through, that's sort of like the first time that you hear the play interpreted by others.
Yeah, it was a really big moment. It's so funny having these four girls' voices rattling around in your head, and then sitting down at a table and seeing them in front of you and hearing them with your ears rather than just like, just in your brain. Um, but no, it's a really big moment, and I think it's a big moment for any writer. Um, but especially when a play is so personal. It, yeah, it's emotional.
Was any of the readings from the cast a complete 180 to what you expected?
I mean, for like, yes, absolutely. Um, the ending of the play, and I don't want to give too much away,
And
but the ending of
wouldn't want you to either.
the ending is up for interpretation as to what happens, and certain elements of the folklore is very much up to interpretation. And so one of the most fun things for me after the read through was hearing the cast's interpretations of some of the vaguer elements. And I think that a story, especially a horror or something that's very suspenseful, if there's a very clear this is this, that is that, no question about it. It takes a lot of the fun out of it. I like a discussion. I like things to be a bit up in the air. And some of the girls were saying stuff that I hadn't even considered would pop into people's heads as to what had happened to the characters. So that was really fun.
Again, don't say anything concrete, but do you as the writer have your opinion on what happens at the end?
Absolutely. I've got a very strong and solid opinion on what happens at the end.
Did anybody in the cast nail it?
Yeah, someone did.
Do they know?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, no, because I had to share it with them after their first read through so that they know how to act it. Because it can work if the actor doesn't know what's happening, but it's more powerful if everyone has at least the same interpretation. So that they're not reacting differently to the same thing.
Did that mean that the second read through had some big sort of emotional differences?
A little bit, nearer the end, yes. But it's also really cool because all of the characters have such different perspectives on what's going on, and there's a lot of bickering, and there's some really sort of compelling arguments, and there's also some not so compelling arguments, being made on stage, which makes it even more fun when you're like in the bar afterwards and you hear someone sort of parroting back one of the lines from the show, and say, "Oh no, but so and so said this, so that means it's real or it's not real or whatever."
That
So
must, as a writer, just fill you with, yeah.
yeah, it does. It's pretty good.
So, the show itself, turn the clock, tell us when it's on.
We're on at 2:30 every day in Gilded Balloon, TV it in the turret, so it's a nice atmospheric little room.
And does it have a life after the Fringe yet?
Fingers crossed, watch this space. Nothing set in stone that I can share.
And that space, presumably online, website, socials, where would we look just to keep an eye on
Yep.
things?
So on the EDFRINGE website, Gilded Balloon website, we also have our own website. So I'm from Cutty Sark Theatre, named after the witch in Tam O'Shanter, not after the boat. And we also have social media, which is on Instagram at Cutty Sark Theatre is the best place to find us.
And I have so many questions about delightful deep knowledge of horror and film and pastiche, and I'm going to wait for most of those for the microphone to go off. But was Kurt Russell at the end of the thing or not?
I haven't seen the thing. You're kidding. Terrible.
And we're just
but
going to roll the credits on that one. Eve Miller, writer and director of Turn the Cloth there, and the show itself, 2:30 at the Gilded Balloon TV at Turret Room. Little flag goes up here, though. It's not on Wednesday the 26th, so if you're listening to this podcast straight away in the morning, it's not today. Plan for it on Thursday or Friday or Saturday or Sunday, or is it 5? There's still 5 days, 5 showings of this, 6 days of the Fringe. Lots of time to get yourself planned in and see it. And as always, back to our website, edinburghfringe.thepodcastcorner.com for links into the box office, Cutty Sark Theatre's Instagram, and to find out more about the Strut Safe charity. So there we are, back into the city, back into the shows. It is going to end soon, but it always feels never-ending and wonderful and something for absolutely everybody in the city. So the flavour is here. Everybody else has a slightly different palette, but I hope you're enjoying this one. And as I said, right at the top, link, like, love, share, subscribe, all the usuals. You do that, I'll head back into town, and I'll catch you tomorrow. listening to the Edinburgh Fringe Show, hosted by Ewan Spence, produced by Spence Media for the Podcast Corner. Listen to more from The Fringe at edinburghfringe.thepodcastcorner.com.